A Seattle landlord was forced to move into a van after his tenant pretended to be low income and didn't pay rent. Now, the tenant is renting the unit out on Airbnb. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have a pretty nasty story for you today, and it's about a garbage tenant in Seattle, Washington. I've covered Seattle many times before, and as you know, they have extremely strong tenant protections up there. They're very anti landlord up there, and a lot of landlords, especially small mom and pop landlords like the one in this story, they're getting taken advantage of by professional tenants. And that's what I call the tenant in this story in particular because this tenant knew the rules of the game, and knows they can't be evicted easily. So they went all the way to the point where they are actually renting out this property on Airbnb after not paying the rent. I mean, the landlord, struggling, barely able to make the mortgage payment, the utilities, etc., is homeless living in a van. That is bad. Okay, that is really, really bad. I hate to read this sort of thing because you know what? The small mom and pop landlords, we are the ones who provide the most affordable housing. We're the ones who provide the places for people to live when the big corporate landlords are only providing much, much more expensive housing. So, yeah, when we get taken advantage of, it discourages us from wanting to even participate in this business. And, I feel bad for this guy. I feel really bad. But, as I've said many times before, there's only one real solution, and that is just to sell and get out of there. Okay, nobody's forcing you to be a landlord in a place like Seattle or a place like Oakland, California, or a place like New Jersey, or any of these places where they treat landlords like complete garbage. There's nobody forcing you to do that. Yeah, there's great appreciation. Yeah, the property values have gone up, but all the headaches, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. And I deal with a lot of stress with regular properties here in Kansas City area and in the Omaha area. I deal with a lot of stress from that, but it is nowhere near the amount of stress I would deal with if I had the same tenants, but I was located in one of these places where they hate landlords. Okay. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. I'm just curious if other landlords on here have ever had it where a tenant has tried to rent out their unit, their rental, on Airbnb without letting them know. Okay, I know that's not the entirety of the topic involved here, but it is certainly a factor. And you know what? It's garbage. I just don't like that tenants think that they can just use your property for anything they want. I started putting in my lease specifically that this place cannot be used as a short-term rental because I had a fear that this sort of thing would start happening. Okay. Anyway, let's get into the article. This article is coming from mynorthwest.com, and it says, gross. Nightmare tenant made Seattle landlord go homeless. Yeah, I've covered a few articles where landlords have gone homeless due to the laws, rules, and regulations put in place by these far left-leaning progressives that, just make it impossible to be a good landlord. Okay. So anyway, let's get into the article. A Seattle landlord stated he's now homeless after one of his tenants faked being low income in order to avoid paying his rent. Making matters worse, the landlord says the tenant is actually turning a profit on the property by renting it out on Airbnb, and the city is doing nothing to help. Jason Roth said he bought his South Seattle home in 2016. A mechanic by trade, Roth loved spending time improving the building. He entertained the idea of leaving Seattle to pursue other career opportunities, so it made sense to list the house as a rental. Roth says he found a tenant who appeared responsible, but things changed on March 1st when he didn't receive the first rental payment. My question is, what kind of tenant screening did you do? I hate to go into anything where, hey, I'm questioning the landlord's tactics, but when we're talking about smaller mom and pop landlords, a lot of them aren't doing the best tenant screening, okay? And if you're not going to do good tenant screening, you're just begging for problems. So, yeah, I mean, I will critique that. If anything else, I say you have to do thorough, very detailed tenant screening. Now, up in Seattle, they might have laws up there that make it so that your tenant screening process isn't as thorough as I would like. In fact, I believe they do have some laws that make it much more difficult for landlords to weed out bad tenants. But even then, there are still things you can do to make sure that you have the best tenant there possible. And I'm just questioning, just what this guy did. I'm not going to make any assumptions, but I'm assuming that he didn't do as thorough of a job as necessary. I wasn't mad. I just approached him and asked, "What can you pay?" And we took that route, Roth told Jason Rants on AM 770 KTTH. He proposed to me what he could pay, and we did a formal agreement. I paid an attorney to read it up, and he still couldn't pay. That's when Roth heard from a friend. To his surprise, he was informed that his rental property was listed as an Airbnb. So this guy, he actually paid an attorney to make sure that all the paperwork and everything was right on what the guy could pay for rent. So that's telling me a couple of things. One, the law in Seattle is so complicated that you have to have an attorney in order to make sure that your lease is written correctly. But two, it's telling me that this guy, he's not very experienced, and he definitely needed the additional help. Okay, so yeah, he's getting kind of screwed over here, but man, the tenant is the one to blame. Okay, yeah, he might not have done everything 100% to my standards, but at the same time, he's getting taken advantage of by a bad tenant who now is listing the property on Airbnb. But there's more. Okay, there's more to this story. This is totally backwards, Roth said. This is totally not what we agreed upon. Not only is the nightmare tenant not paying rent, but he's also not paying utility bills that are in Roth's name as the owner. Because he's claimed low income with the city, they won't shut utilities off, Roth said. So I'm actually paying for there to be an Airbnb unit for him to make an income. I'm not exaggerating. The nightmare tenant forced Roth to move into a van, which he modified using his mechanic skills. So here we have a tenant, right? And you have the utilities in your name. Now, I don't know what the law is in Seattle, but maybe it is required that the landlord keeps the utilities in their name. Okay, I imagine that is the case. I know that's the case in some places, even around here. Okay, so if he has to keep the utilities in his name, the city is refusing to turn the utilities off because there's somebody living in there and they don't want the place to be uninhabitable, because they consider that, oh, that's wrong, you're going to turn the utilities off, oh, whatever. Okay, this guy's taking advantage. So that means the landlord has to pay that utility bill for a tenant who is not paying him rent. So not only is he not getting any rental income, he has to pay the utility bills. So he is paying a whole bunch of money for Airbnb people to come and stay in his house, and he doesn't get to keep any of it. So here's my suggestion. When you finally do get this tenant out of there, what you need to do is you either turn it into an Airbnb yourself, okay? Then you collect 100% of the profits, or you just sell it. Just get rid of the place. Okay? Get out of that van. Maybe you should just move back in. Get out of that van. That kind of sucks living in a van. This is a totally awful situation for a landlord to be in. I consider myself lucky that I was able to build out a nice little camper van given the situation, Roth said, but I'm embarrassed. This sucks. I am paying for this guy to live in this house. The paradigm shift towards renters' rights has created obstacles. Roth believes he has few advocates in the situation. He has hired an attorney to help him sort out what has become a nightmare. Roth said Airbnb support has been no help in the matter either. And that's unfortunate. He should be able to call Airbnb up and be like, hey, this place is, not authorized to be on the platform. Please delist it. But, I don't know if that would stop the action or not. But, in terms of advocates, there aren't any. Maybe a local landlord group that could help you out. But most likely you're just going to have to, like you said, pay for that attorney, go through the extremely long, extremely slow, and extremely complicated eviction process. The tenant will probably be in there for another few months at least. And when you finally do evict the tenant, like you're a small mom and pop landlord, you probably, that's probably your only property. You could sell it, take the money and run. That would be an option. Like I said before, turn it into an Airbnb, but do not rent it again. Do not rent it again. Okay, you learned your lesson. Yeah, you got taken advantage of, and it might be just time to sell it and move on.